Yeah, so I'm Tim Holzheim. I'm currently doing my master's in computer science at CEUR-WS and work also for the Confident project. And today I'm going to talk about the Wikidata synchronization, especially on our use case on the CEUR-WS publishing platform. Yeah, to give you a brief introduction, the CEUR-WS publishing platform is a free open access publishing platform for academic workshops and sometimes auch conferences and symposiums. And it started in 1995, and the data schema hasn't changed much since, so it's still only encoding the data in HTML. It now has some CSS classes which indicate some properties, but I'm going to show it later. So the current state is that it contains over 3,240 proceedings volumes, and overall over 4,000 editors and 50,000 papers, and it's growing continuously. So every week or so, a few volumes are added. So as you can see on the right, this is basically the homepage of the CEUR-WS proceeding site. You see that there are the volumes listed, and actually on the homepage, all 3,000 volumes are listed with the basic metadata they have. So it also doesn't provide currently a proper search function, so you have to use Control F or use Google to find anything. And besides this general homepage, it also has distinct volume pages, which also have semi-structured data in HTML format. As you can see on the right, they have data for the proceedings, the event where it took place. For example, here the Wikidata workshop, which was a virtual conference, which took place in October. We have the information about the editors, the affiliations, maybe a homepage of the editor, and also the papers that were published in this proceedings volume. And of course, the author information. So the data is currently only structured in HTML, which makes it hard to machine readable and also to find useful conferences. So the goal was to semantify the data to improve the accessibility and machine readability, and also to provide better search options for the user, but also for the editors that are inputting new proceeding volumes. So they currently don't have a proper interface to do so. And also to provide a synchronization to Wikidata, which I'm going to into detail a bit later. So the ultimate goal was to provide a semantic MediaWiki, which contains all the old data and where we also add the new data to, and also a synchronization method that we can keep updating Wikidata with the new volume information. So for those who don't know what Wikidata is and why we want to publish our data to Wikidata instead of keeping it in our own wiki, it's because Wikidata is one of the largest knowledge graphs. It's crowdsourced. It provides a public SparkQL query endpoint. And for example, if you matched your entity pages, for example, you have a page about breeder, then you can actually fetch additional data from Wikidata to show it in your wiki or to use it for additional queries. So for example, if you only have breeder, you can look up the coordination, the population, and so on. And you have also a unique identifier with the QID. And also for this case, because 30% of all items in Wikidata are scholarly articles, so adding the papers that are published in CEUR-WS is really helpful to increase the visibility and the queryability of the data. So how do we migrate the only structured in HTML format the data from CEUR-WS to Wikidata and also to our semantic MediaWiki? So what we approached is that we, in the first phase, extracted in the historic data, matched it against Wikidata items, for example, the authors, editors, the locations, and also the event proceeding if they were already added to Wikidata. We then imported them to Wikidata, where where we currently in this process of doing so. So we have largely finished it, but there's still some entities that need to be imported. And after that, we can basically straightforward generate from Wikidata pages for our semantic MediaWiki. And then in the next phase, when all the historic data is added, we can then, with, for example, page forms or flex forms, as we learned a few days ago, that we can then provide a proper interface to add new proceedings to the semantic MediaWiki, and then provide an interface or API to actually publish from our semantic MediaWiki, where we edit and add new volumes and author information to Wikidata, and also to have triggers and events to fetch other data from Wikidata to MediaWiki and vice versa. And we would also be able, since the data is properly formatted, to generate the old HTML pages to keep the old view. Yeah, to look a bit into the data extraction. So as I said, it's semi-structured. So the newer volumes all have these CSS tags, which can help to enter to extract the data. But for example, there are also like log time, which is a tag which contains multiple data snippets that we need to extract. For example, we have log time, and then it's Breda, Netherlands, October, and then the date. And what we actually need to do to be able to migrate it to Wikidata is that we need to, for example, the location information we need to map to the corresponding Wikidata IDs, like for here, Netherlands, the Q55. Yeah, and for the date, we need to properly format it into, here it's the date range, so we need to format it into a start date and an end date. And yeah, what we end up if we extract all the data from one volume page is that we have different entity records. For example, we have an author record with the ORCID and the name. And since we have multiple papers and the paper has multiple authors, we have different, we have multiple records of this type, which we need to integrate into Wikidata. And to do so, we used Wikibase integrator, which we extended with a property mapping, so that we define for our records. So for example, we have, let's say, a dictionary in Python with just the different attributes that are listed here. And then we can define a mapping that we then import it to the corresponding Wikidata property. Of course, the reconciliation has to be done in a previous step. For example, to find existing events or locations, that we don't add a new event when it's already in Wikidata, because then it has later to be manually merged or automatically by a bot, which can be a tedious process. And yeah, maybe I can give a shot, because Wikidata doesn't use one of the big ontologies like FOV or OWL. It uses its own property structure. You need to find the corresponding Wikidata properties, and maybe I can show, for example, either you look up because some property the mappings to these ontologies, but for example, if you want to look into how you can map a proceeding and don't know how the which properties are used by a proceeding, you can look up which properties are used by these by proceedings, and then, for example, select short name. And if you go to short name, I think there's somewhere defined that it's also used as yeah, abbreviation, so as acronym for events. So oh, sorry. Where was I? So, wait a second. Okay, so if you have your property mapping you can directly enter a record to Wikidata, and of course you have to ensure that you don't create new entities or items when they're already in. So now that I've talked about how we add data to Wikidata, we can check how it looks in Wikidata. So maybe I show first how our prototype looks like. So this is written in, do I need to increase it? This is our prototype. It's purely written in Python with JustPy. It basically shows the rough estimate of what was extracted. And for example, we have a range import, and also here today the Wikidata endpoint is really slow. So normally it's much faster. Okay, here you see it. So this was the record that was already entered, and here you can see that it found the record, so it didn't create a new one. And as you can see, it didn't create the event because there are multiple events for this proceedings volume. As you can see here, it's a proceedings volume consisting of multiple events, and here you see it's linked also correctly to the corresponding things. So we also implemented a rudimentary search so that we can better search for things like linked data, so that you have already a title search. And what you can see here, oh, now I changed the, okay, but I showed it here. So what it basically does is it also provides a link to Wikidata, and also we queried DBLP. DBLP is a bibliographic catalog which contains roughly 2/3 of the CEUR-WS proceedings, but has a different focus, so it doesn't have all the properties and entities we are interested in extracting and synchronizing. So we use DBLP to get the identifier. We query DBLP to get the identifier, if DBLP has one, to also include it in Wikidata, so that we also have a cross-reference to different knowledge graphs. So, for example, here's the publication ID is queried from DBLP and added during the process. So, okay. Okay. So, but now the data is in Wikidata, and we said we want our data in a semantic MediaWiki. So how do we do it? So it's basically a straightforward approach. So for example, this is the case for Tim Berners-Lee. Here's the Q identifier Q80, and we can basically define what properties do we want to extract. In his case, we only had the name as the name and the homepage, and with this information we already could match it against the Q identifier, and then can already get the additional data like the DBLP ID, the GND ID, and so on. And the result of this query would basically just like this JSON record, which you can see can straightforwardly be mapped to a template and then inserted into a wiki text page, which makes it able to integrate or migrate the data from Wikidata to Semantic MediaWiki really easily. Yeah, so what do we achieve so far? So the things in green here are already completely imported. So we have added 3,239 volumes and 3,350 events to Wikidata. And the extraction process for the affiliations and the editors is also implemented, but we are still waiting for the legal approval to add this data, since it's personal data. Yeah, and as I said, a look into the future, what we want to provide is that once we have all the data in our Semantic MediaWiki, we want to add new volumes only in Semantic MediaWiki and then publish them to Wikidata, and also keep updates from Wikidata. So we want to provide triggers for publishing and loading updates, and also automatic reconciliation on, for example, locations and so on. Yeah, and this is also part of my upcoming master thesis, where I take a look, a bit more general look at this, where we want to interactively select a set of properties and items from Wikidata, and then this subgraph that these properties and items describe, we want to publish to Wikidata and then provide methods to keep both subgraphs in sync, so you can edit in your Semantic MediaWiki and publish to Wikidata, and vice versa. Yeah, so this is basically it. Are there any questions? Yeah.
No idea if I'm visible or not, but I already said you yesterday that it's really interesting, but I noticed that you're using some classes to basically embed metadata in HTML.
Yeah, that's the old approach. You mean here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is only the old approach, and you're not using that anymore in the new publication. If you're using a MediaWiki for publication.
What do you mean? You mean the tags or the?
Yeah, the tags.
You mean when we generate the HTMLs?
Yeah.
So this is basically just the templates that you would apply to. So you have the data already queryable. So what template you use to render it? If you add, for example, proper ADFA tags, it's all possible. So
have you considered using microformats for this? Because there's a. Are you familiar with the microformats format?
No.
It's exactly meant for this type of scrapable information, where you use a sort of, well, it's vocabulary, like H event as a class creates an event page.
I mean, when the data is properly semantified, you can basically apply a template and choose if you use JSON LD or.
So that's up for the user.
So it's up to discussion, I think.
Okay.
What to use, since it's already in Wikidata. I don't know if you want to query and pass HTML.
Yeah, I'm not sure which use case it would be, but some users have a browser that can automatically detect, hey, this is an event, and that will be cool. But yeah, it depends on the use case.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So, any other questions?
Can you tell something more about this Wikibase integrator software? Is that a standalone script, or what is it? How do you run it?
It's in Python API. Maybe you can
repeat the question.
Yeah, the question what Wikibase integrator is. Maybe you can find it if I don't look in my user space. So it's a Python API. They changed their API recently, and I'm currently in the refactoring our own code to it. So it's in the newest version, it has become, where can I find a good example? It has become object-based, so you query your, I can show it. So you query your item and then can add label, description, and claims. And what we did was to add a wrapper around it. So maybe you can, no, that's not. To have it is add a wrapper around it so that we can define property mappings, so that we don't need to use the API, so that we don't need to say we want property P17, and because you also need to define the proper Wikidata classes for the types. So here we can simply say, in the record we have a date, time, and then it's properly converted to the Wikidata time with a precision of 9 or so. So our wrapper helps a bit to simplify the usage of the Wiki database integrator because of the Wikidata API that's requires the proper types for the properties. Is there a question in the chat? I don't see the chat right now.
I answered 2 of the questions.
Okay. So there's also the option to generate this property mapping from a query, because all the data that is here is also stored in Wikidata. So I looked also into the option. It would also be possible, so that you only have to provide the property ID and the column or a keyword. So this is already something that can be done.
We sometimes work with different Wikibase instances, so not the Wikidata, but the private Wikibase instance. Would it work with that too? Any reason why it would not work?
No, it's Wikibase integrator is actually developed for Wikibase and not primarily for Wikidata. So I tried it on the test instance of Wikidata. So it doesn't have the same properties and so on. It's just a plain, it has the same setup as Wikidata, but not the same data. And I run my test against it, so it works fine. So I didn't experience any issues. But I wanted to set up a Docker image with Wikibase so that I can properly test it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're doing a very interesting master research.
I hope so.
We have more questions. Okay, then we are a little bit ahead of schedule.